Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have some other people join us. And I see Noah, I've got Noah and Caden. And we're going to, I want just some housekeeping here. We are in Module 8, so you have 2 exams this week. And then I have some resources there for you on business intelligence. When people use that term, what are they talking about? Then some information on the return on investment on analytics, and then Easy Excel that covers regression. Now, as we've been doing, we've been working ahead on the cases. So we're at the point now where we're working on XLS 13. And I'll go down here to the guide for those, the Excel cases. We worked on one last week, and this is case 13, pivot tables. Last week we did that Pacific Trading case, which is an old case of mine. We looked at the company that sold fruit, and that one is over there in the module. So for the workshop credit for 13, you can turn in that one, or you can turn in the groceries PT, and that file is one of the practice files in Chapter 43 in the Excel companion files, Excel companion file zip file number 1. And so Chapter 43, it's the practice file there. It's called Groceries PowerPoint, and this one is for those who want a more scripted approach to working with these, to see a step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. And so I have both of those. Now, let me say this. Chapter 43 has several files there that walks you through just about every feature and function of Excel pivot tables in Excel. It would be worth your time to skim them and take a look at them. I think with the practice file, the case file that I did should help you. And today we'll do some more kind of semi-scripted work with this groceries PowerPoint. So that's the one we'll be working with. And again, that's out of the Chapter 43 practice files. And in the textbook, it starts with figure 43.1. There are some other files that deal with with pivot tables. Now, make sure we're rolling here. Okay. Now, as I'd mentioned before, this is Module 8. And again, we're working ahead, and we're going to finish the Excel cases with pivot tables. Pivot tables are a good introduction to databases, and so that's why we're going to cover it. And next week we'll start on the database cases. There are 6 of them, and it will be the same process we've used before. I'll have an old case that I've worked through, and then I'll also direct you to a case out of the companion files or out of the textbook. And that's the POTSI textbook, which deals with those, and those are going to be the companion files. That'll be the files for access. You said, what in the world are you talking about? Let me go over to Vital Source and I'll show you. Right now, okay, we've been working here in this this textbook, data analysis and business modeling. Okay, now we'll start to do some work on access this week, and I believe we're going to use the POTSI text. I'll have to go back and take a look at the syllabus, but I'll have 6 access cases. Well, I can do that right now because it'll tell me in the guides. Why am I wasting time blabbering when the guides will tell me? Cases, access. Here it is. Yeah, it's the Lambert and Cox text. So we'll walk through, like we've done with the Access Excel cases. We'll have ACCDB1, and the business problem and the DB skills that we'll work on. And then the example file over there, it's an old case I have. And then here's a file from the Lambert and Cox text, and the pages in the Lambert and Cox text that's drawn from. As you can see, I have 6 of those cases. So we're using pivot table as a way to introduce ourselves and put our toe in the water, getting us ready to deal with databases. Now, we'll go back here and we'll go to chapter 43. Chapter 43 walks us at the start through 2 sets of questions. One, functional questions, that is, how do I do certain things in pivot tables? Number 2, then it gives us some little vignette cases and says, okay, what were my sales in November? How many pounds of potatoes did I sell in December? That type of stuff, as a way to let us use some of the functions in pivot tables. I would say this: pivot tables, a pivot table in Excel is the model for the kinds of tools that you're going to use when you go out to work. And pivot table is a hybrid type of product, meaning it uses the best of a database, tries to use the best features of a database and marry that with the best features of a spreadsheet, okay? And so if you were to say, well, what are the top products out there? There are going to be a lot of old school people that will use Microsoft Excel. If you go to work for many companies, they'll have a client or an application that's probably, they purchased it probably from SAS. SAS Visual Analytics is one. SAP is another. SPSS is another. Oracle is another. There's just all kinds of products out there that are what I call these hybrid types of products. Now, so what are you talking about? Well, let's go over, and you want to have that file, and the file that we're going to work with is that one called Groceries PT. Now, here in the text, they start to ask us some things like calculated fields, slicers, and we'll start to see some of these questions in terms of the pivot table. And as we see it and work it a little bit, we saw a little bit when we worked with Pacific Trading. We'll see it again here with this Groceries PT. So let me find that file here. And this is from the chapter 43 practice files. Now, we're just going to kind of walk through this and deconstruct it a little bit and see what's going. Now, I will probably depart from script a little bit here or there. If you really do, really, truly want to go step by step by step, there are about 4 or 5 practice files for the chapter. They will walk you through that, and your best bet, have the book open along with a spreadsheet, with the spreadsheet, because it uses about 4 or 5 different ones to show you some of the functionality, okay? I want to use this session to get you ready and thinking about how databases work. And also, I can't emphasize enough to you that the functionality that we see in pivot tables is very close to what you'll see out there in terms of what people call dashboard products. Now, you're going to hear that term used over and over and over. Here's what it means. A dashboard is very simply a screen that has an application or applications that provide you ongoing, sometimes even real-time data and data analytic capability and data visualization capability dealing with key performance indicators. And when we start looking at databases next week, we're going to look at one called Northwind Traders, and there's a little dashboard that opens up as you open up that file. A dashboard is meant to give me a quick look at how I'm doing And as I've said before, dashboards are what you see will be dependent upon your level in the company and what industry you're in. But they're intended to let you immediately see the key stuff that's going. It's not even the dashboard of your car, okay? But behind the dashboard is a concept, and we cover this in the data admin course, of a data warehouse and a data mart system. And that is collections of tables. Now, I'm with the data administration course right now, and we're learning how to take table after table after table and link them up using a relational database approach. And what that lets us do is exploit the law of large numbers so that I can start to look for patterns. Now, you have this file open, and this is that groceries PT, and that's from that Excel companion zip file number 1, okay? And here you have a very typical table. I've got year, month, store, group, product. These right here, these are what we call dimensions, also known as variables, okay? And these are things or characteristics. These are things that I want to know about transactions, or things that I want to know about people, or things I want to know about places, or things I want to know about things. And so what we have here is a summary of transactions by year, by month, by store, by group, and this would probably be better known as product group, and then the product itself. And it shows us the units and the revenues. These last two columns, H and I, are what we call fact columns. And we tie facts to characteristics to produce a record. Okay? Now, tables are typically tall, and let's look at this for a moment. Now, this table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It has 7 columns, okay? And it has, I think, 923 records. So let's talk about for a moment what I've got. This equals 7 times 7 times 920. I think it's 923 units. I've got 6,461 pieces of data. Okay. Now, out of that, I extracted 923 records. But I'm going to see some patterns in those 6,000 pieces of data that will give me some information. Because even if these are arrayed in rows or records, they're meaningless until they're attached to something I'm trying to find out, or something I'm trying to learn, or something I'm trying to see or understand. And so if you go back over into the textbook, and I'll pop up Vital Source again, they give us some information about the characteristics, and if you look right here, you'll see with my cursor, here's some typical questions. The amount spent by customers per year in each store on each product. Why? Well, I want to know, is there a product, for example, that over time the sales are trending up or down, or are they flat? The customers, how many customers are making a purchase? And just alone, customers, you start to say, okay, would I have a lot of data on customers? If I'm smart, I will. All of this is being accelerated by, you get a simple example. You go to Walmart, you buy something. Most of us use a credit card or a debit card, okay? And I don't care if the people bag it for you or whatever. The minute your card is swiped, they grab the money from your bank, but they also grab every bit of other data that your card holder has agreed to share with them. And they sell our data. Now, by the time you're my age, most of you, hopefully, things will have changed where you'll say, hey, wait a minute, my data is valuable. You sign a contract for a phone, you give up your entire, you give up all your data. And people are saying, wait a minute, that's got some value, and does it ever? So or how much revenue did I have at each store? Or revenue per year? Now, these kinds of things, these kinds of questions, and this concept they talk about of slicing and dicing, okay, the ability to ask these questions has to be managed by a process of what we call query discipline. Query meaning a question. I'll give you an example. It's a church I work with. It's been a long struggle to get them to a point where they have daily reports that they run that coincide with their operating cycle. Every Monday, they run a report on what? Guess what? How many people were in the life groups? How many people came to the services? How much money was collected? Okay? So they focus on that. Those are the reports. So someone comes into the office of the person who does all the running the queries. They have a system called ACS. That individual, they might come in and say, can you tell me how many redheaded people were baptized at our church in 2014? Because people think you got a database. Hey, it's easy. Just call it. Just snap your fingers there. That might take an hour to run the query and do the drill downs. So query discipline is absolutely, positively essential. And we've just gotten finished with a calendar where they know on any given day of the week and any given month, here's what we're running. So they know the reports they're going to run, so they know the data that they'll get. And I try to give them a day for just what we call the serendipitous queries or the serendipitous drill downs, or someone comes in with an off-the-wall question. Or if they say, here's one, how many life groups do we have that have more than 25 people? And what are their age ranges or the profile? Why? Well, when a life group gets too big, it's time to divide it. And Baptists, better than anybody, have learned to multiply, you divide. When you get above 20 or 25 people, the feeling, you go from a life group to I'm not sure what, okay? And I know a person who's in a life group, and I won't tell you the church, but that life group has 185 people. That's not a life group. That's a whole other church. So you got to say, maybe it's time to divide them up. But then you try to, and people go, oh, I love it here. Well, they love it because there's usually a lot of good food brought every Sunday. Okay, tons of good food because all these people bring food. And then you can hide. So you don't have to ask them questions. You don't have to stay your lesson. You may not be held accountable or any way. So the query discipline is one of the things that is the big challenge. Now, we've got this one little database, pivot table we're looking at in this workbook. And again, I just got through showing you that I have 6,461 bits of data. That's the number of cells that are in this table. How much information is in there? I don't know. A lot of people and information theorists say that in a given enterprise or type of enterprise, like a retailer, for example, for every record, okay, you have a minimum of 5 times the number of columns in that record, i.e. the dimensions, including the facts. So if this is pretty typical, there are actually 30,000 insights that are in this set of data. How valuable are they? That's another question, and that's why getting you familiar with the products is important. But getting you familiar with the questions to ask becomes the more important issue. See, if you're not scared of the technology when you go out to work, and employer goes, okay, this person's scared, they can work with, then the employer knows I've got somebody who's going to be thinking at my level, thinking like I'm running a business. And I'll guarantee you when I get anytime I get a new client, and I do all this work pro bono, okay? And every church I've ever worked with, I tell them, here's what I ask you to do. Here's what I want you to do. And they go, what's that? Give me $50 to buy all the Tums I can eat for the next 2 years. Okay, because it's going to be nothing but heartburn. But nonetheless, I can harvest tremendous amounts of insight. So this whole idea of slicing and dicing, we're going to see that the pivot table, the pivot table is the basis for all of these other products. Excel is the basis for all of the spreadsheet products that are out there. Access is the basis for all of the database products. Microsoft Office, its productivity tools are off the charts. The people at Microsoft are just absolutely brilliant because they understood how to take this stuff and use icons and tree searches, etc. Well, that being said, we're going to look at this table, okay, and we're going to just go ahead and we're going to create a pivot table. So I'm going to click Insert. If you look to the left there, you'll see a thing called Pivot Table. Insert, and I'm going to pivot. Make sure you click inside the table. My apologies, so it goes hot. Pivot table, and notice you'll see I've got a table range. Now you're going to notice data, and then the sign, the exclamation point that says this is a tab in a worksheet. Okay, so I'm going to get it from this table range is going to be from the data tab in the worksheet, and I'm going to get it from cells C2, okay, to I-924. If there's anybody that doesn't see that, let me know right now. It's always a good idea to, like I told you, the tables are tall in nature. So you always want to make sure if you get a file from somebody at work, ask them, how many records are in here? Because as you start scrolling, 2 minutes later, it may be 5,000 records. And in 2 minutes, a lot could happen. The Bible says the Lord will come in the blink of an eye. That's a lot quicker than 2 minutes. My luck, it'll be that somehow I've come up with a way to eat all the food you want and never get fat. And I'm just about to show it to the pharmaceutical industry and the Lord comes. That'd be my luck. That'd be my luck. Anyway, so we've got this table. Now in the dialog box that said you want to put it in an existing worksheet or a new one, and I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. I could put it in some other locations if I choose, but I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. And there it is, sheet 1. Okay. Now on the left hand, you're going to see the table area. And on the right hand, you're going to see the pivot table fields area where I decide what I want to put into the table. Now, if you look over here on the far right hand side, yes,
what chapter was this in?
43. It's for chapter 43 in the zip file, and it's the groceries PT file in the practice files. Got it? And then you could go ahead and, if you need if you need to jump back, you'll have the video. So, but it's just simple. You just click inside that table, then click Insert Pivot Table, and put in DATA exclamation mark, okay, and then C2 I-924, and make sure that those cell references are absolute, separated by, and if you get lost on that or something like that, they'll walk you through here. Follow? Now, I don't know why they give us the children of the corn data thing with the D and the, but and they have 923 there. They had reconfigured the table, so it's not A1, it's actually C2 in the file that you've got. Okay, that help?
Yeah.
All right. Now we've gone ahead and created the table. Now here is the pivot table fields box. Now the field box is set up as the following. Think of it as a series. Think of it as a series of two windows. The filter is the big window. Then within the filter you have the rows, and that would be the vertical portion, and then you have the columns, which would be the horizontal portion of the frame, and then you fill it with the values. Okay? Now, let's go back to the file and I'll show you. All right? They're going to have us do a pivot table, and we're going to do this. Here it is. And scroll on down here to the page, or if you have, you could see the pages if you have your book or when you look at it later. But we're going to do this. We're going to start with the filter. Okay? And the filter is going to be the month. So I just click here, and then I drag and drop it down here to the filters. Okay? That's my big frame. You say, why would you choose the month? It could be for a variety of reasons, but groceries, consumer products, groceries are notoriously, they're seasonal because they're consumed. you don't buy a can of beans and keep it for 30 years. You buy food and then you eat it. So perishables like that. So we want to focus on the monthly sales because we'll see, based on the time of the year, the fact it's a perishable, we might get some insights. Now the next step for us is we want to go ahead and fill in the rows. Okay? And the first row is going to be the year. So I'm going to click on the year and then put it here. Okay? And then the second row is going to be the group. And so I'm going to click on group and put it under year. And then the third row is going to be the product. So I'm going to click on product and put it under the group. And then I'm also going to have, so I've got the store, and the store will be under product. So I'll come back up here and I'll get store. And so I can scroll that. So I should have, and the authors show us here in the textbook just to be certain, the group, the year, the group, the product, and the store. We're organizing these. Now, the beauty of a pivot table is if I were to say, well, I don't like that, I can change that format. It's very easy. It's drag and drop. This is why it's such a fantastic tool and why everybody and their brother has imitated it and enhanced it to make their fortune selling these types of tools as well. Now, you're going to see that we have the values. So I'm going to take units, and I'm going to put it into the values box. And then I'm going to take revenues. And notice that up here in the column, I get the sum of the values. So in the values, I have the sum of the units and the sum of the revenues. You say, could I reverse them? Yes, but it's senseless. Because the next question I say, okay, our mind thinks like this: how many units did I sell at how much money? So if I wanted to know of the units sold, okay, then I know what I'm selling them for. So we tend to work from that progression. Now we've got, this is in what we call a compact form. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So everybody got this or see it here? Now if you get lost, again, You've got the textbook that'll walk you through, and they show this the completed form, and this is in what we call a compact view. Now, you could see why your understanding and comfort level with this is so important, because look at what a powerful tool I have right here. I can look for any given month or set of months to see sales of the cereal, which is a product group, and then fruit, which is a product group. They're in the bold, okay? Ice cream, which is in a product group, or milk, and that's 2005. Then I've got 2006 and 2007. So I can use these filters to answer some questions that I may have. And again, I'm just kind of walking you through this. The textbook walks you in a very rigid way through each of the practice files to show you the functionality and all that business. I think you're probably a little smarter than that, and so I don't feel the need to do that. But this one file here will show you pretty much the functionality piece. Okay, now let's go up here to the filter, and if I want to look at just 1 month, I can. And I've got January for 2005, 2006, 2007. One of the nice things about pivot tables is you can use them on the fly, and they're quite easy because they're so intuitive. Okay, you might have to putz around a little bit to get a particular answer, or get the filters arranged, or the variables arranged, the dimensions arranged. But hey, you'll get there. It's designed to be quite intuitive, and there's some functions of it that are a little fancy. That's okay. I would say this: I could teach an entire course on nothing but pivot tables. And that'd be great, but if you don't understand the business rationale behind them, and that is because they let me answer questions, okay, that are linked to my company's performance, you've missed the whole point. And the reason that we'll go from pivot tables to databases is because we get the data from tables stored in a database. And we use a thing called a relational database, where we can take and tie all kinds of tables together. All right, now we've done this business, and again, we're here in the compact form, and you'll notice I've called up January. If I want, I can choose just February. Okay. Now, when you're out at work, there will probably be some times where you'll have to maybe do a fairly sizable report, and you'll want to organize that report in a progression, starting with just the raw data like we had in the table, okay? And then, if it were me, I would do a screenshot, i.e. a print screen of what I get as I do each search, for 2 reasons. Number one, it saves me a lot of time of trying to write a bunch of verbiage. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Number two, if you see here on the right, there's no question about what I was after and how I went about getting it. Did I get the sales in February did I get the February sales and units for everything we sell, okay? Product group, for 2005, 2006, and 2007. I can collapse some stuff. So I'll show you a collapsed field. We'll come over here, and if I'm not interested in showing everybody 2005, I'll collapse it. And you can see 2006. The nice thing is I don't have to do a whole lot of extra work because I can also collapse this. So I have 2007. So if I'm just interested in the units and the revenue for those 3 years in total, I got it. And then just I click and expand it back out. This is a pretty typical feature on all of the commercial products that are out there. The temptation is this, to get this tool and go nutty with it and ask and just run a bunch of queries. And that's why I told you about query discipline and focus on that and getting people to understand, you know, a system like this, say like the ACS system, or which is for churches, it's designed just for churches. They're not meant just to ask endless questions that pop in your head. They're meant to give you the capability to figure out what you should ask, i.e. key performance indicators, get that data in a timely manner, sometimes even real time, but usually not. Well, inventory systems are probably going to be the closest thing in banking systems to real time. Everybody with me so far? I hope I don't sound like a madman, and I don't think I'm overselling this, because what you're looking at right now, using a pivot table, 30 years ago, there were very few companies in the world that had anything like this. This is how fast things are changing and moving. And this is a desktop application far more powerful than many of the databases I worked on back in the 90s and the 80s. So it's incredible how fast this stuff is moving. And the thing that's so important is it is so intuitive. It's very, very intuitive. You can look yourself and you can see I can expand the columns, etc. And I can see how I performed that particular query. Okay. Now, if I want to, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back to all of them for the month. And I'm going to take a look at the top of the toolbar. Now you're going to see the pivot table tools. You see that at the top of the toolbar, and you have two of them here. One's called design, analyzing. Others called design. Okay. Now here's what I'm going to click on design, and we have the design toolbar. You have, if you want subtotals, grand totals, a report layout. Do you want to put in blank rows? Do you want banded rows, banded columns? You could just choose, and then you could also see the pivot table styles, the layouts. So you just tailor or customize it to however you want. The main thing is, if you're doing it right, you'll have it standardized, or you'll have a color coding scheme. Now, one of the group of folks I've been working with, they have their reports come in the banners for their data are seasonal or quarterly. So if they see a red banner, they know it's the third quarter. They see a yellow and it's a green one, it's the fourth quarter. I've tried to get them to link the colors into the colors of the liturgical year, the church year. And there are specific colors. I think purple, I think white is Christmas, green is Pentecost, I think. Depends on what liturgical group, but you can follow the church calendar. There's such a thing, actually. There are churches where the sermon for that week is not, hence from Heloise and Matthew 17:43. But a scripture passage from the gospel, a scripture passage from the epistles, and one from the Old Testament, and a psalm. And it's laid out there, so you know what you're going to get. and it constrains the person in the pulpit to stick with the text. A little bit of Bible goes a long way. All righty. So we decide, let's do this. Let's go over here to the report layout, and I'm going to click on it, and it's in compact. I'm going to show it in outline form. Okay? Just a different look. Now the text gives you some verbiage because the authors are getting paid to produce so many words and pages. They go in a little deeper into report layouts than maybe I would. But you know, if you're a report layout freak, why, have at it. But it just gives you a little bit different look. You can kind of see the way that the focus, you follow left to right in terms of looking at it, and you'll see where it's kind of leading you to. And then we have the tabular form. So you can see those. They're all subtle, and they give you a little bit of a different look. Some of them are maybe a little easier to do the drill downs because of the layout. I've found that I'll be with a certain type of set of data, and I'll say, you know, the base layout really is an outline layout for me. And the book walks you through those: compact form, the outline form, okay, and the tabular. And then they ask us, why is a pivot table called a pivot table? Good question. Well, I'm going to take this report layout back to compact, okay? And I'm going to show you. If I'm curious about how would these look if I move the year column over to the sums. Well, let's just do it. I can do that. So I'm going to take the year and move it right into the values. And now I've got the years really accentuated. So I just took year out of the rows and put it into the columns. You see the different look? When we started the course, I talked about that article back from 1973 in Statistica, I think it was, by Anscombe. Anscombe's quartet, where he showed 4 sets of data that had the same summary statistic, the same mean, median, mode, standard deviation. But when I charted them, they were remarkably different. This is why I've had you guys taking tests off the Stephen Few textbook, why I've talked so much about visualization of data, because as human beings, we respond to patterns, and as he warned us, and it is true today, our capacity to generate data has far outstripped our capacity to understand it. Now, part of this is just simply we're generating a lot. Every 2 years, we double the amount of information, we double the amount of data that are in the world. And that is accelerating at a rapid pace because we've embedded chips in so many things. So we've got all these sensors out here that are just sending data back to servers. You've got Google that's got Google Maps is. I saw some people come by our house the other day in Google Maps. They got the little thing. They're getting the 360 view. And they're using the GPS. So I'll go. We don't think anything about going to Google Maps and drilling down to a street level. That is a tremendous amount of data, and so it's running away from our capacity to grasp it and understand it. So thinking through the looks and what they imply can mean everything. The best example I can give you would be if you look at stock data, the prices of stocks. Let's say you take the average price of stock in Wall Street. On intraday trading, that is the trading set for today, it's all over the map. But if you were to look at the market from 2008, okay, all the way up to now, you'd see it's maybe a little bit here there, but it's rising because I haven't crunched the time periods. And the Few book, the Stephen Few book, talks a lot about presentation of data, and that's a very, very important skill that you're going to have, because pattern recognition for you will be everything. It will be everything. Now, here we can see we took the year and put it over here, and we get a completely different group, okay? A different look, excuse me. And then if we want, we're not happy, well, we just take it back out and stick it back over here. As we had it, we can take the group, and I'm going to move it over here. I'm just kind of doing this, improvising here. Let's see what that looks like. Wow, that's a whole different look. Now I'll take the group back and put it over here. And then the next piece of this is the product. So we're going to take product and put over here. Now the visual acuity gets ruined a little bit because of the pivot table fields. Okay, we can collapse that back if we want to, but you can see we get some very different looks. And it's going to depend upon what you want to see and what you're looking for. And there's so much of it, there's just no formula to say, okay, this is what you would do. And then we can do it by store. Okay, so we played a little bit with our data here, and let's go ahead then and we'll walk through some of those tasks over there in the chapter. Here's one where they collapse the serials. And these product groups you have, and then so they just collapsed it. Here's years column. We did that a while ago. So we take the years, and what I did was I put years under the values. Okay, the sum of the values. In this one, they take the years and put them above the sum of the values. Okay. It will probably be up to you, maybe not, to determine how you want these laid out, but they have some different implications. And they do give us a different look. Then here they show us by group and by year. So if I'm interested in product groups, how did they do in 2007, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Now, one of the things we haven't played around with is the analyze. So if you see up here on the pivot table tools, click analyze. And here's where we can do a couple of things. We can insert a slicer, or we can insert a timeline. And the text walks you through that process of inserting a slicer. I'm going to walk down here to that. And you'll want to look at some of the directions, but basically in this case, they did a slicer based on the month. So if I want to choose just one particular month, I slice down and just pull January. The timeline, that's a different story. It'll give me a timeline picture. These are some of the newer functions in pivot tables. They're okay. Make sure when you play around with them, you know what you're doing. And you almost have to just do them on a constant basis to see how valuable or not they're going to be. But they're another one of these attempts to promote more visualization within this product. And they'll walk you through that. But that's when you're working with them, you're working with the analysis tools. Okay, and notice the little two filters that have popped up here that signify I've inserted the slicers. Now, I want to show you the pivot table charts. They're not too bad, but here's a good example, and this is from an author of a textbook. Okay, now I don't like to write these people and pick on them because most of the time they are professional people. I usually like to see who this person is, and I like to find out. If they're teaching somewhere, I won't use their text unless I know they've done a lot of work out in the private sector. They just haven't taught the stuff they've had to use it when their tail end was on the line. So, but here's one where somebody, now you knowing as well as I do, that they've made a bad choice in terms of the type of chart. So if I want to change the type of chart, it's simple. I click, right click. Now, if you were to ask me which of these would be the best, I could choose a column or I could do a bar chart. But it's much better than a line chart. Now, I like the column chart. I'm going to click that because it makes sense. See how much better it looks? You use a line chart, folks, when you have so many data points that using a bar chart would look meaningless or jumbled. How many data points is that, Dr. Harmon? I'd say when you start to move to 10 data points or above, try using a line chart. Now, the other thing that people will often do is overdo a chart. Now, this chart's pretty simple to understand. If you wanted, you could put a title in here. You could put a axis title. You already have the legend. And you could put another axis title down here. I don't think you have to because it's pretty intuitive. These are sales of these different product groups per year. Now, you could even skip the axis titles and just put a title above or embed a title in the chart. So you telegraph the meaning. The other nice thing, and this is like most of the products that are out there, is you can put your cursor here and notice what I get. I get a little pop-up. So I don't have to display the data. The data will be displayed if I put my cursor on it. Okay? This is really valuable for you if you're doing this on the fly. Now, I would recommend that if you are going to do a presentation, let's say you've written a report for your boss and you've included all of this in, okay? Then I would make sure that you have that report with you so you can show them if you're on the fly what you did, but they should be able to see how you got the answer. What's more likely is they'll say, okay, well, could you do this? Because I'm interested in finding about how much Ben & Jerry's I sold in July of 2005. Okay. And you go in there, hop to it, and you find it. How many units did we sell? Find that. So being prepared for the serendipitous stuff. But if you're in a meeting and you really haven't had a report, and people are just doing this on the fly, these are really, really valuable. And I know I gush about them a lot, but trust me, live without them for a year or two like I have, and you'll go nutty. And I tell you, the years I was in consulting before these tools became really taking over, looking at chart after chart after chart after chart of data was just like, it was excruciating. It was as bad as attending a lecture of mine. And that's bad, my friends. Okay, now let's look at this next one. And we've got another chart, okay? And again, this isn't the data in a compact view. And I've got these by the row labels. And again, I don't want a line, but this time I'm going to change the chart type. And I'm going to see, well, how does this look if I put it in a bar chart? Not bad. Again, I can put my cursor here, okay, and get the data points. And I'd want a title to telegraph the meaning. What is it all about? You're going to hear people talk a lot about business intelligence, and I have a link there for you. Business intelligence is quite simply the conceptualization of key performance indicators that tell you how your firm is doing, and key environmental factors, which tells you about the world in which your company lives, and the ability to get that data as close to real time as you can get it. That's business intelligence, okay? For example, I was watching the other day, there's a special on PBS about, the new rockets and getting to space and all this. And there's an industry out there that's just exploded in the production of tiny little satellites. They're about this big. Why would somebody want to well, if I can put 10 of them up there and I can have them traverse all of the automobile plants in Japan and China, and I can get a picture down to a license plate for that many miles up, I can start to look at and see where are they parking their car? How many cars are out there? And if the parking lot's full, that is the cars they manufactured, and they're just sitting there. They may not be selling too many cars. I might want to beam in on the coast to see, are they loading a bunch of cars for export? And if the lines are full, and that means, that may give me some data ahead of time. We're seeing more and more of that type of use of geospatial tools to kind of find out what's going on at the place. I was just amazed at all the uses. One of the big uses is in agriculture. Sensors embedded in fields, hundreds of thousands of sensors that give data about how the soil moisture, its condition, and folks in big ag using that to help manage the process of growing tremendous amounts of food to get to our table. It's just amazing. Okay, so this has got this by the year breakdown. And here's some slicers. Okay? And if you click inside, and they've got them by the month and by the product. And you'll notice over here the visual cue you get from month and product, because we're using the slicers to go down. So if I want to look at January, there's January. Now you say, okay, I do something and I get a little bit messed up. I'm afraid I've messed it all up. Here's a tip. It's called undo. I've learned two things: undo it, or turn it off, or delete it. If it's not playing nice, I'm the human, it's the machine. I am in control of its destiny, at least for now. All right. Here's another set of slicers. We've got to arrange a little bit. And now their textbook will provide you the narrative for what they did there. And then also using conditional formatting. And then here we have the products sorted, in ascending order. And if I'm interested, for example, in the West, in these stores, chocolate milk. Let's say that I own a business, and I'm a somewhat maniacal, demented person, and I want chocolate milk. I want to sell more chocolate milk than anybody in the world, because when I was a little boy, I couldn't get enough. Okay? So I'm going to find out which store sold the most chocolate milk. And I can use the conditional formatting to do the color scales, and somebody is going to get a bonus, and somebody is getting fired. You say there are not people out there that are like that. Yes, there are. I won't say where it was, but I worked for a gentleman who one day he was in my office screaming at me for 20 minutes. The next day he brought me a bonus check for $5,000. It was a wild ride. It was interesting. And I said, Lord, why have you put me here? And the answer became apparent the longer I worked for the guy. I had to learn how to deal graciously with difficult people. Why? Because I expect them to treat me graciously, and I'm a difficult person. Again, we can do some conditional formatting. You can, and there we just took it from the highest to the lowest. The textbook walks you through some things like a color fill to give you kind of a gradient picture, as you can see there, which in this case I think is useless. Here's a nice looking at average. This is from another case. But again, you can see the textbook will walk you through and provide you narrative for those. Well, listen, we started about 15 minutes early. And unless somebody has some questions, I think we've explored this fairly well. I'd say chapter 43 is a tour de force, as they would say, in terms of using pivot tables. One of the things, regrettably, we will not do is work on data models. But that's okay, because when we work with databases, we're going to essentially be doing the same thing. But it's a chapter 44 is one worth looking at. The data model, if you were to say, other than some of the preliminary things we've done there, that chapter on data models, yeah, well worth your time and energy to take a look at. Okay, folks, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And anybody have a question? Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the share and wrap this thing up. And again, thank you so much for being here. God bless you, and have a great weekend.